What's up, Great Nation? Gabe the Great back here again for another video. And if this is your first time stopping by the channel, welcome on by. On this channel, we like to talk about basketball and different topics going on in the basketball community. So we'll hit on the NBA, WNBA, AAU, EuroLeague, anything that has to do with basketball and basketball culture. We like to have a conversation about it on this channel. So if that's something that interests you, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and join in the conversation. But let's get started with today's topic. So this is the third video of the installment of Is AAU Ruining American Basketball? And in the first video, we looked at the history of the AAU, who started it, how it almost crashed, and basically how basketball saved the Amateur Athletic Union, and basically how that became the overall arcing term for grassroots basketball. In the second video, we kind of looked at the difference between how black culture and white culture approaches the game of basketball. And in today's video, we're actually going to be talking about injuries. Now, this was inspired by an article from ESPN by a guy named Baxter Holmes. I'll leave a link down to the original two articles in the description. But in that article, he touched on the staggering amount of injuries currently happening in the NBA. To put things into perspective, let's go over a few numbers. In the first two seasons of the 2014 NBA draft class, that draft class missed 838 games. The 2015 draft class missed 637 games in the first two seasons. 2016 draft class, 548, and the 2017 draft class missed 751 games in their first two seasons. The 2018 season was the first season in which over 5,000 games were missed, and that also happened in the 2019 season. In the 2018 season, the All-Stars missed on average about 14 games that season, and in 2019, the All-Stars missed on average about 17 games that season. So the most obvious question is, why are all these stars and why are all these young players missing all these games? And a lot of it has to do with the AAU culture, which we're going to get into today. Now, for those of you guys who don't know what specialization is focusing on one sport for at least 8 months out of the year at the exclusion of other sports. Now, I do want you to know that this is not just a basketball issue. This is an overall arcing issue across all sports in today's modern American culture. And one of the things that characterizes specialization is the difference in goals. When a player is not specializing, their goal is simply enjoyment of the game, to go out there and to have a good time. Whereas with specialization, the goal is improvement or to get better. And the biggest thing contributing to all the injuries in the NBA is that kids are specializing in basketball at a lot younger ages. Kids are able to get on travel teams as young as 7 or 8 years old. Now, in the past, kids might have played basketball in the winter and in the winter months only, taking the rest of the time of the year to either focus on other sports or to not play anything at all. But nowadays, basketball is now a year-round sport with travel teams traveling around the country all year round. Now, the data overwhelmingly supports that specialization is not good for children. Not just from a physical health point of view, but also a mental health point of view. One of the things that many pediatricians are saying is that kids' lives are too organized these days and that they don't have enough free time. They've also found that people who specialize in sports earlier tend to enjoy their sport less as they get older because it feels more like a job than playing a game. Other stats and data say that specialization puts you at 125% more risk for injury rather than cross-training. 36% of all high school athletes specialize and are 2 to 3 times more likely to suffer a hip or knee injury. But what they've also found out is most Division I athletes didn't specialize. Somewhere close to 88 to 90% of Division I athletes did not specialize. Now the question becomes, how much is too much? Now, recent studies have found that there's an elevated risk of injury once training volume reaches more than 16 hours per week. Early participation differences between elite youth soccer players who progress to professional status at age 16 years and those who did not revealed that those who had progressed had accumulated more hours per year in unstructured soccer activity between the ages of 6 and 12. This suggests that elites sought more unstructured soccer during their free time. This is supported by data that shows that enjoyment of a sport and intrinsic motivation predicts attainment. Successful elite tennis players often have good long-term relationships with the same coach, access to tennis courts, and less overall demands for success compared with age-matched, non-elite tennis players. Nearly all the data suggests that those who release the most elite levels of athletics have more unstructured time with their sport, meaning that they're spending less time training and more time playing. And it also suggested that enjoyment of a sport and intrinsic motivation is a really good predictor at whether or not a player will reach elite or professional status. Now, contrary to popular belief, all the data suggests that you should not be specializing your kid, rather that you should be cross-training them. Cross-training is when a player is playing multiple sports across the year. Cross-training is good for many reasons, but the best example is like rotating the tires on the car. If you are rotating the tires on your car, then you're going to spread the wear and tear around. The same thing is true for sports, except when you specialize, all the wear and tear are going to the same muscles, the same joints, and the same ligaments. Studies also show that kids who cross-train or who play more than one sport are more athletic than those who specialize. This is because kids have developed a wide variety of physical traits or skills to build from. But if all the data suggests that specialization is bad for kids, then why do we do it? Now, the problem isn't necessarily AAU, but rather the culture of AAU. And since we're talking about culture, this is a great time to mention the sponsor of today's video, me. Back in 2017, I wrote a book called Winning Winners and Wins. Now, this book breaks down why it's so important as a coach or a player or a leader of any type of group, why it's so important to build a great culture. Now, in the book, I break down the difference between a winning culture and a losing culture, how to help players believe in themselves so they see themselves as winners and not as losers, and of course, how to get those wins. Now, in the book, I discuss the importance of environment, atmosphere, being a leader of leaders, and why positive reinforcement is the best possible way to motivate a player. If you would like to support the channel by purchasing this book, I'll leave a link down in the description so that you can get your copy of that book. Obviously, all the money goes to help sustaining the channel here so we can continue to have great conversations like this. But let's get back to the video. Now, part of the belief of AAU culture is that there is a lot of money out there, but very little opportunity to get that money. Let's look at how becoming a first-round draft pick can drastically change your life. Let's use 3 different income brackets. Let's say you're in the top 1% of all American income owners. That means you're making about $420,000 per year. If you're right in the middle, you're making about $60,000 per year. And if you're at the poverty line, that means you're bringing in about $25,000 per year for a family of 4. As you can see on the screen, this is the rookie wage scale for the 2019 NBA draft. If you were the 30th pick of that draft, that means that you can make anywhere from 80% to 120% of $1.6 million. Or 4 years worth of income if you're in the top 1%, 27 years worth of income for the middle 50%, or 65 years worth of income if you're near the poverty line. If you got drafted at number 15, you can make anywhere from 80% to 120% of $2.7 million, or 7 years worth of income for the top 1%, 46 years worth of income from the middle 50%, or 110 years worth of income for people close to the poverty line. And if you were the number 1 pick in the 2019 NBA draft, then you can make anywhere from 80% to 120% of $8.1 million, or 19 years worth of income if you're in the top 1%, 135 years worth of income for the middle 50%, and 325 years worth of income if you live close to the poverty line. And this kind of money is just going up year after year. Now you may be saying to yourself as a player, as a parent, that you don't really care about getting to the NBA, that you only really care about getting a scholarship to a university. Well, the same thing applies. The average in-state tuition for college in America is just under $21,000 and just under $47,000 for out-of-state tuition. Multiply that by 4 years and you're looking at a 4-year scholarship for in-state tuition at about $83,000 and an out-of-state tuition scholarship at about $187,000. So basically there is a lot of money out there, but a very finite amount of people who will be drafted or who will get scholarship. And so what this creates is a culture of perpetual competition and specializing. Always feeling like you gotta be better than the next person because the next person might take your scholarship or might jump ahead of you in the NBA draft, costing you millions of dollars. So a lot of parents and players are sacrificing their youth in order to collect a paycheck in their adulthood. The consequence of that is opening themselves up to more injuries. Adding to this false reality is the fact that no one can really quantify exactly what does it take to make it to the league or to make it to college. How many hours do you need to train? What do you need to work on? And how long is that going to take to make it to the league or to get a college scholarship? And so because no one really knows specifically exactly what it takes to make the league or to get a college scholarship, everyone ends up competing with what I like to call the 5 a.m. superstar. Everyone competes in their mind against this person that wakes up at 5 a.m. and works out for 2 hours at 100% the entire 2 hours and then goes to school, and then after school they're doing a second conditioning workout and lifting weights, and then they got their team practice, and then after their team practice they're shooting in the gym, getting their shots up because you gotta get up at least 100 to 500 shots a day. And so the most competitive athletes are competing against this person that literally doesn't exist in a quest to be better than everybody else. All the while, this puts their body at risk. And what the media likes to do, and especially what the NCAA likes to do, they love to focus on all the success stories, all the people who did make it, all the people who went through the AAU system and became millionaires, and all the people who went through this type of specialization and were able to get a college scholarship and to make something of themselves. And we always talk about all these success stories, but nobody wants to talk about the hundreds and thousands of bodies that get left in the wake. Nobody wants to talk about the 11-year-olds and the 14-year-olds who are having ACL surgery. No one wants to talk about the person who grows up in AAU their whole life, and by the time they become a senior in high school, they can barely get up and down the court. Nobody wants to talk about the person that does get their college scholarship, but they get injured and then they lose everything. And nobody wants to talk about how 90% of professional athletes end up broke. And so one of the things that the article talks about is that no one really has an answer for this. No one really has an answer for this injury epidemic. So what could be some possible solutions to this problem? Again, the problem isn't necessarily the AAU itself or grassroots basketball or the NCAA or the NBA. The issue that we have in America is we have a cultural problem. We have a problem where in our culture, everyone's striving to be better than everybody else. We have a culture that profits off players at a young age, and those same players cannot receive any of the benefits of that. We have a cultural problem where people only understand one aspect of becoming a professional athlete, which is the athlete part, where people don't understand in the basketball culture about agents, about collective bargaining agreements, about branding, about licensing, about all the things that goes into being an independent contractor as professional athletes. Because Professional athletes are independent contractors. And the big cultural problem that we have is while we are specializing our children, we are not professionalizing our children and giving them the education that they need to become equipped all around. The other cultural problem that we have is the fear of missing out. We are so afraid that if you don't get that time in the gym, that somebody else is going to take your scholarship. And therefore, we over-specialize our children, we over-schedule our children, and they're not getting enough free play. They're not getting enough time to just go out and pass a ball and play one-on-one with their friends and play knockout and 21 with their friends at the park with their friends unsupervised. They're not cross-training. They're not playing multiple sports. This is why a lot of the young players in the NBA are sustaining injuries that many players didn't get until they were later on in their career. The reality of it is kids have no idea what's good for them. They don't know. They don't know whether or not travel basketball is the best thing to do for them at 7, 8, or 10, or 11, or 12 years old. They don't know how much play is too much play. A lot of them don't understand the difference between organized and unorganized play. And until we as a culture and as people who have grown up with basketball and who love the game of basketball can do a better job of helping children understand the value and importance of keeping the game a game. And one of the bigger problems that we have to ask ourselves as parents and as coaches and older people in the game of basketball is at what point does basketball stop becoming a game and start becoming a business? I think a lot of people believe that the game of basketball becomes a business once you get to the NBA. But there's a lot of money exchanging hands at AAU tournaments and it's not going to the players. So yes, for your kid, maybe it is a game, but for somebody else, it's a business. And if it is just a game, why is it so important to specialize at a game that is just a game? I think many of us are conflicted about whether or not this is a game or whether or not this is a business, and we have been conflicted about that for a long time. This is why no one can come up with an answer. I honestly don't think that there's an overarching answer for every single person. I think it's up to the individual player and their family to be able to do what's best for their particular family. I know in my case, my daughter is cross-training her whole life up until she turns 15 years old. And yes, she's only 5 years old, but even now she does 3 sports. She does MMA year-round, she does basketball during basketball season, and soccer during soccer season. And typically she has the summer off. We're leaving her a lot of free time and a lot of wiggle room to try new things. She's also going to try tennis. She wants to try swimming, and she's doing a lot of stuff to just be a kid and have some unorganized free time. What I have noticed from this is that my kid tends to be able to pick up on a lot of skills a lot faster than other kids. I've also noticed that it's made her quite the athlete, not to mention the improved self-esteem and confidence that comes with playing a game for fun. But on the flip side of that is as she gets older and as she gets more competitive, our plan is not just to focus in on the technical skill side of basketball, but also the business side of basketball. As a parent, I feel like it's important that I understand how agents work and how collective bargaining agreements work and how branding and marketing works and all these things work, because all that goes into becoming a professional athlete. Also talking to college coaches and understanding what are the things that they are looking for when they are looking at a recruit. Many of them will tell you that skill and talent is not the most important thing to a lot of them, but to a lot of them it's character, and to a lot of them it's other intangibles that go alongside technical skills. After all, they are coaches. They literally get paid to teach people how to play basketball. So I think for many of them, they're not necessarily worried about your skill, although they're not just gonna, go recruit a bunch of trash players to play for their university. I do think skill is not the #1 priority for many coaches, but I don't think a lot of players know that. But hey, what do you guys think about this topic? What do you guys think? Is AAU ruining basketball culture in the sense of injuries? Let me know down in the comment section what you guys think. So remember, like it if you like it, subscribe if you're new. Go follow me on Twitter. I'll be over there talking to myself. Be great, be grateful, and I'm out. Peace.